NRCS, Natural Resource Conservation Service. It's a really cool, I would say, if I had to go back, I think that's a cool place to work, because when you see the kind of work they do, it's really exciting work, and it's very valuable work. She'll give you an introduction probably of where they started. The point I wanted to make, based on our earlier conversation today, wrapping up this thing, remember we talked about different kinds of economic models and how it's driven, right? She's going to show you some programs today where they incentivize, they provide matching funds and money to do sustainable practices for soil, for irrigation, for wildlife habitat management, for all sorts of things. So in the agriculture, natural resources in the agriculture field, we've actually got a really amazing infrastructure to promote sustainability. And that's why you see the sustainable ag with the Asilomar sustainability practices, the Forestry Council, which is also ag, even fisheries is also a form of food and ag. That's one of the reasons that we're actually ahead of the game in sustainability, is there's good support for this. Renewable energy, on the other hand, we're incentivizing the people only to build big utility-grade projects, and there's no incentivizing for them to clean it up, to revegetate it, anything. There's no support for them, and that's not all their fault. We just don't have the infrastructure in place. Remember when we did mining? SMARA, the Surface Mining Reclamation Act, incentivizes and sometimes regulates them to do the right things by the land before they start, with the water, with the wind, with the air, with the wind-blown sand problem. It's incentivized and structured for them to get help. NRCS does most of that for food production, and it's a pretty awesome organization. It's a government organization. I won't steal too much from Marian, but just look at it from that aspect. And because of that, Deanna volunteers there, and we talked about that last time. But it's a very cool place to work, and you'll find a lot of happy people, because I love going there because everybody feels like they're doing something worthwhile, and they are. So thanks for coming, Marian. I'll plug you in, and we'll definitely let us know how you how you got started, and how you got into the thing as well, if you don't mind.
Hello, everyone. My name is Marian Jordan. I have the wonderful pleasure of speaking to you all this evening. I just found out about this yesterday, so yay! As Neville said, I work with NRCS. I'm a soil conservationist. I started with the agency in 2009 as a student trainee, and I came on full-time with the agency in 2011. I've worked in 3 duty stations. We called our offices duty stations prior to being here in Victorville. I started working in Wisconsin. That's where I was before I came here. And I moved to the wonderful city of Victorville in February. So this is going to be, give and take. If you guys have any questions throughout my presentation, feel free to ask. As I say, I don't have as much information to give you guys in PowerPoint, but definitely if you throw questions at me, I answer them to the best of my ability.
What does NRCS stand for?
Great question. NRCS, Natural Resources Conservation Service. Yeah, we started off.
Which PowerPoint is I can load it?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yep, you're on it. Yep, sure. We started out as an agency as a result of the Dust Bowl in the 30s. I'm pretty sure you guys have heard of that, where agriculture was the hot new thing, and they were getting these farming equipments, tillage equipments that they could use, and they were just mulling over the land, and it's bare, you got the wind coming, and wind is just blowing everywhere. So, it's, what do we do about this? So we started off as Resources Conservation Service. Any more questions? Again, if you have questions, feel free to.
Oh, we do have a changer for you. Wouldn't it? It should be right there. I'm sorry. There's a little that little thing. You should just push that little right arrow.
Okay.
Before we start.
Thank you. It's been a while since I've done this, so work with me. Okay. So, and again, I'm working off Holly Sherrill, of course, she's my boss here in Victorville. So I'm working off her slides, and I made a few changes. So, again, as we go through, if you have questions, please feel free to interrupt me, and then we'll move forward. So who are we? We're a federal agency. We work with the government. Sometimes when people come up to me, hey, what do you do? I work for the government. Oh, so you're one, you like inspect meat, you make sure that our meat is safe? Well, that's not us, so we want to make sure we differentiate what we do. We're a non-regulatory agency. I try to let people know that we're here to help. Our motto, as you'll see in one of the upcoming slides, is helping people help the land. And that's kind of what we do. We provide services to producers, to private landowners, helping them to solve some of the conservation issues or environmental issues on their property. They can sign up for it. It's voluntary. We're not regulatory. We're not like EPA saying you've got to do this by such and such or else you'll be fined. We're here to help. So some of the issues or concerns that we focus on as an agency, soil concerns, erosion, water contamination, air pollution, plant degradation, quality, animals, livestock, whether they have enough water, and things of that nature. People, the practices that we do, we want to make sure we have a safe environment and that people have clean air to breathe. And energy. That's one of the new focuses that's been, added. With all the stuff that we're doing on private land, we want to make sure that we're doing it in an efficient manner. So energy has been added as a resource concern. Some of the positions within the agency. We have listed here biologists, we've got engineers who may have training in civil engineering or agricultural engineering, rangeland conservationists, soil scientists, ecologists, so on and so forth. All of these individuals, we all work together for a common good. Again, that's helping people help the land. My background is in biology, so I've got my training in biology and also in agronomy, plant and soil science. There's also the financial side or management side of the agency as well, and that deals with human resources, budgeting, contracting, those people who have the wonderful, wonderful gift of dealing with money, making sure that everyone gets paid, make sure the contracts are obligated and all of that. They do those things. And some people like to know, hey, if I work with NRCS, what's the starting salary? You can start off $35,000 per year, up to over $100,000, depending on what level or what your title may be. So, we work with farmers, ranchers, private landowners. That's sort of our audience. We assist in protecting our natural resources. We provide technical and financial assistance as an agency. Sometimes we have individuals coming to us and say, hey, I have this problem. I need help. Sometimes we can help them with some of the things that we want to do, but our primary focus is technical assistance. From there, we can decide if, some of the resource concerns that they're having, if we might be able to help with that. And if so, we might be able to provide some financial assistance. But technical assistance is sort of the meat and potatoes of what we do as an agency. And we have offices that are located throughout the U.S.
Can you give an example of what you have helped in? Like, just an example, because you just say all this stuff, but for me, I don't know what you do.
Okay. So let's say, for example, if someone comes to our office and say, or gives us a call, most time they give us a call, they will say, it may be an issue here, but coming from Wisconsin, one of the big issues is, thank you, I got this big gully forming in my field. And that could be a result of, too much water, concentrated flow. The water has this channel or this path that it continues to follow, and it's cutting into the property, it's cutting into the soil. So they say, hey, I've got this issue. No matter what I try to do, it keeps coming back. What can I do? So we as an agency, as soil conservationists, or maybe as a soil conservation technician, they do a little bit more of the engineering work. We'll go out there and take a look at that. So, go ahead.
I was going to say, is this also like for, say, in Apple Valley residential too, or is it just for the farming and the ranchers?
Well, with our agency, we focus mostly with agricultural land. Now, if there is municipality or urban areas, you may be able to seek some assistance with the county, but we focus more on farmland, private land.
So you're like an extensions office, or are you replacing?
We work with extension, but
Okay.
we're not an extension office.
Since you've been here in February, have you been able to work on any projects that are in our area?
Okay. Yep. So a couple of producers I'm working with now, one of their main concerns is, and what I'm finding here in the area, is wind erosion. So we're trying to produce crops, but we don't have a lot of cover because of limitation of water and because we're in the desert. So one of the things that they're wanting to do is, how can I decrease this wind erosion? How can I prevent, these high winds, 30, 40, 50 miles per hour coming in with this carrying this soil, and it's acting like a knife, if you will. It's coming at a high speed, high velocity, and that sand is like cutting into the leaves of their trees, and it's damaging their plants. So what do I do about this? So one of the things we might consider, hey, maybe we want to look at installing windbreaks or hedgerows. And windbreaks is just, and you will see a picture of that pretty soon, it's just like a straight line, maybe one or two rows of trees. It might be a pine tree, whatever the case may be. Hedgerows, those are shrubs, some that flower, that might provide a habitat for pollinators, for bees, and other insects to come in. So that's one of the things that we're working with also. Also, because water is a precious commodity, even more so here in the desert, that's an issue as well. And we want to make sure that people are using only what they need. So looking at what Mr. Cleveland did, how he's managing his irrigation system, he's got all of this software, that's important, and making sure that you're applying exactly, or trying to apply exactly what that crop needs at that time, so you're not wasting that water. Because if you're wasting that water, the crops are not getting it, you're wasting water, and you're wasting money. So we want to make sure that you use it when you need it, and then hopefully it'll be available later. Yeah.
Yeah, and actually before you came on, one way NRCS actually helped me is when I first took over this ranch up here, all the irrigation system was worn out. Nozzles were mixed matched, leaks, and it wasn't a uniform application of water. So I went to NRCS, and working with their engineers, they helped me design and pick a sprinkler package and nozzles that would most efficiently apply water based on my soil type. And on top of that, they provide funding to help do this. So they provide the funding to help do these conservation practices that not only help me produce a better crop, but conserve the water and use it more efficiently. That's one of the services I know they provide.
And the NRCS, when they talk about stuff like soil erosion, we don't often think of soil erosion because it doesn't have like this crisis quality where, oh my God, it's right in front of our face. But we lose about 3 billion tons of topsoil a year in the United States. When you lose this kind of topsoil, you got an issue because we are making more people, but we're not making more dirt. And so we got to find ways to feed this increasing population. And when soil erosion is happening, it's a major issue. If agricultural productivity declines, food costs go up, then it's more difficult for families to survive. And given that impoverished rates have increased during the Great Recession, food costs, if they grow to a certain point because of declining productivity, it can have a real effect on the middle class. So it's not just we got to help farmers out, it's helping society maintain a balance, both in regards to the social and economic parts, as Neville talks about, and also making sure that farmers can be productive and that we are good stewards of the environment. So the NRCS is really trying to provide, trying to be an asset to these folks so that they can provide the services that are necessary for a society to survive. We take agriculture for granted a lot, but it's a huge industry, guys. It's the #1 industry in California. It's far more important than Hollywood. I'll tell you that right now. It's huge. It's a huge amount of money in this state. It's the backbone for why California exists.
I want to introduce Dino real quick for the people that don't know who Dino is. Dino is the one of the political science professors here at BBC, and we've taught this class and this academy in conjunction for about 6 or 7 years now. And so what's so cool about his input is he's coming from the policy and implementation side, and some of the students here tonight, and this is just to bring Chad and Marian and Ricardo up to speed, some of the students here are political science students, and they've probably only heard of a center pivot system for the first time tonight. But without the policy side of it, we're all stuck. So it's a really cool dynamic thing. So I thank you, Dino, for being here again.
Sorry for not introducing.
No, that's okay. It's okay. That's okay. Most of the people know we've been doing this for 4 weeks now, but I just wanted to make sure these guys kind of got the feel for what's going on.
No.
Makes a good conversation.
No, I think you make a great point. We do work primarily with producers, with farmers, but we take every opportunity we can to do outreach, make presentations like this, or, we'll go speak to middle school so the kids kind of understand, or people understand exactly what we're doing, that, we're all in this together. So, like you say, you lose that topsoil, the top, 4 to 6 inches of the topsoil of the ground, like that's your most productive area, so you don't want to lose that. If you lose that top 6 inches, then, due to erosion, then sometimes a producer may have to do a little bit more to get the yield that he needs. So he might apply a little bit more fertilizer, he might make a couple of passes with his equipment over it a little bit more. So we just want to make sure that we have, or try to keep that soil in place.
This is a stupid question.
There's never a stupid question.
Where does the topsoil go? Where does it go?
Great question. It goes everywhere. It goes to your neighbor's property. It may come into your property. It ends up in the lakes, rivers, and streams. I'm originally from Mississippi, so you've got all of the soil, chemicals going into the Mississippi River, and it's going right down to the Gulf of Mexico. You've got that toxic area, fish are dying. It's going somewhere, but it's not where you want it to be, so that's why I want to try to keep it in place.
In this area specifically, like you've got the Santa Ana winds, and it blows all of our topsoil for miles.
Mm-hmm.
That walks down to, or does it stay in the atmosphere and then it goes into the ocean? Or
Well, the thing with that, like you said, it goes for miles. Who knows where it goes?
Some area where we could really great topsoil.
Well, you can see that, with our agency, we have soil scientists. So you can dig a probe in the soil and you can kind of see where you've got new soil on top, new accumulation or deposition there. So who knows where it comes from? It travels. There are also small particles that float in the air, and we breathe it, and it gets into our lungs. So that's why, when we talk about conservation, we want to try to implement as many practices as possible so that we're not breathing in. That's where that human factor comes into our concerns. So.
Could you ask that question again tomorrow when we're out there? Because Paul will show you some of the problems it creates, and none of it's good.
Okay, are you a resource that's cost-free, say, to the farmer? And do you guys often stick your nose in maybe when it's not welcome? Are you always welcome? Are you a policing agency sometimes?
That is a great question.
Three great
We
questions.
are not a policing agency. However, I do not wear a badge. This is all that I wear. However, if conditions are bad enough, they may warrant us giving a phone call, or also giving a phone call. We don't necessarily knock on doors unless we know the individual. I'll give you a prime example. I haven't experienced it here while I've been in Victorville, but coming from Wisconsin, we've got a number of wetlands, or I know them there. They have a number of wetlands. So if someone decides, hey, I need a little bit more cropland, I'm gonna dig a ditch, I'm gonna drain this wetland, and I'm gonna try to plant some crops. Or I'm gonna try to install tile without letting someone know. A neighbor or someone else within our agency may see that, and they will let the office know that's responsible for that area, and we will contact that person and say, hey, you know, you've just disrupted this natural area. You've drained a wetland, and that's protected. The wetlands are protected. So that's how.
Complaint driven.
It could be a bad thing, but we don't want to see it that way. We're trying to protect the natural resources.
Of course not. And
Yeah.
so do you charge, if I'm a farmer and I call you out, hey, I really need help, is there a fee?
We do not charge. The thing is, with our agency, to participate in our programs, you sort of agree to, if you want to do any type of agricultural production, have any type of operating system, you agree to have a conservation plan written with us. And that means that you will make sure that you do not increase your soil loss. With each soil, it's sort of assigned a T-value, a tolerable soil loss amount. So a producer is agreeing to not do anything that's going to make the condition worse, but try, his or her best to make it better. Now, they don't necessarily have to do that. If they decide to participate in some of our programs, then they have to fix it. But if they say, hey, I don't want to work with the government, I don't want to participate in any of your programs, I don't want to talk to you anymore, I don't want to see you on my property, I don't want to have a phone call from you, that's fine. We can't do anything about that. If that should happen, then maybe we'll talk to some of our partners, maybe someone with the county, and say, hey, we tried to touch base with this person, can you talk with them?
Okay.
But, all in all, it's the landowner's property. We can't do anything. If it's something really, really bad, then you may have EPA get involved.
Sure.
Like if you're doing something that's contaminating a water body, you will have a EPA get involved. You may have someone with the state get involved. But we are not a regulatory agency, so we're not going to slap your hand.
All right. That answers it.
That was pretty much my question. If you show up on site and let's say there's a water body, are you required to report to the EPA or to report to the county?
We're not necessarily required. We try to work with them. That's where the previous slide is voluntary. They can decide, hey, I realize that I do have the issue and I want to make it work. Most times we work with private landowners. They realize there's an issue and they want to correct it. So they say, hey, how can we work together so we can remedy the situation? And most times, I'll say 95% of the time, that's been my experience. We all want to work together. Yep.
Yeah, but I forgot.
Okay.
On the note of enforcement agency, it'd be good to point out for them the privacy, the relationship of a producer with NRCS, with the NMPs that we've done in the office. They oftentimes bring up things that are in violation. And the Resource Conservation District with NRCS went to the producers, the dairy producers, and they said, well, we've got nitrated water going places it shouldn't go, and it gets written into the NRCS report. And when the EPA requires this report, NRCS said, well, if they want any information from this report, it's got to be given to them by the producer. It cannot come from NRCS. There's a very special bond between the producer and whoever is actively going ahead, perhaps operating in violation, being pointed out by NRCS, but NRCS that cannot disclose that to anyone. And when that document is developed, they will never disclose it to anyone. And so there's a real true privacy area there. So don't think that anything they do, they're there to help you solve the problem. It's very similar to a client-employer relationship. And what they
With
do
your doctor,
is
yeah.
it's strictly.
Okay.
Yeah. You know, and you know, it may sound a little funny or cliche, but we really are, you know, helping people have the land. That's what we really want to do. We don't want to get anyone in trouble. We want to make sure that everyone's happy, satisfied, and everything is as clean as possible.
Their name's Marian?
Marian? Yes.
So our students tend to be a little bit more like grounded and realistic. So when they see things, they're kind of like, well, okay, well, wait a minute, what's going on here, right? So just to let you guys know what's going on, soil erosion is a huge issue for the United States. It's a major, major issue. There are literally close to 25 to 62 million acres per year that they predict might lose to soil erosion. That's a major loss. The U.S. has been passing laws over the past 20 years to try to convince and try to help farmers with better practices to combat soil erosion. It is a major issue in the United States. It's not a joke. It's not, and what happens when farmland's turned over to urban development, things are even worse. You know what I mean? So there's a real concerted effort by the federal government to do something about this. It's actually called the Food Security Act. Literally what happens is we want to make sure that our food supply is not dependent on another country. It's not just a matter of, oh, let's help the farmers because we like farmers. No, it's a serious issue because we don't want to be dependent on another country for our food. And why don't you think we want to be dependent on another country for our food supply?
They could choke us.
Yeah, it's a major leverage over us, national security wise. Big, huge issue that they do not want us to be dependent on Mexico, Chile, Brazil, or Russia for our food. It's fine if we import some stuff from them, right? But we want a good chunk of our food produced here in the United States. It's a major issue. This is why we subsidize farmers. This is why we subsidize crop yield. This is why we prevent soil erosion. It isn't just, hey, this is a nice thing to do. She's doing a really important job in helping farmers to prevent soil erosion because that is food security for us. If you don't believe me, go to another country and see what it's like and how much you have to pay for meat, how much you have to pay for bread, how much you have to pay for your food, and you'll notice it's what? It's triple, 4, 5, 6 times the price than what you'll see in the U.S. There's a reason why food's inexpensive in the U.S.
I'm sorry, Karen, then.
Sorry, Marian.
It's okay.
Just gotta
No,
put things in
I
perspective.
appreciate it.
Because our students here, we're kind of like, well, we don't, why? You know what I mean?
Right. No.
She's a
Jack
good
in the
guy.
Box is still open, so things must be good.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. It's like that's why we want to get out more because I think sometimes people really don't understand how things work, how you really get your food, and you know I hear people talk about how they interact with young kids, and you know one kid turned away fresh fruits and veggies that were picked because dirt was on it. And it's like, no, we don't get our food from there. You go to the grocery store and get it. Like it just magically appears in the grocery store. So these are some of the things that we're wanting to do. Not just working with farmers and producers, but doing this outreach so people fully understand everything that's involved.
I don't know if you could answer it, but maybe you can, about how we compare as a country to other countries with soil erosion.
Actually, we are pretty bad, but China's 3 times as worse. So if we think we're losing soil at a fast rate, China's losing it at 3 times the rate. They're losing it 3 times faster than the United States, 3 times faster and 3 times in a short amount of time. So China's far worse than us, and they're struggling. Their pollution problems, yeah, it's also from cars, but also it's dust. You see this. I mean, you go to places like, you guys haven't been to places like Oklahoma, but when the farmers plow the ground in Oklahoma, and if the ground is dry, that the particles that go in the air are really bad. Actually, we don't go to Oklahoma. We can go to Central Valley, right? I mean, we got.
I've seen it right around here.
Yeah, you see it right around here. We can go to Fresno, right, or we can go to Bakersfield, or we can go up there. They have some of the Madera. They have some of the worst air quality in the nation, and part of it is
I
because
was driving through Stockton a couple of weeks ago,
Yeah.
and it's really bad. So you don't have to go to another country. It's right here.
Yeah, and the farmers are breathing that. Their kids are breathing that, right? It's not like they're immune to it because they're farmers. They don't have special masks. I mean, they're breathing this just like everyone else is. But yeah, the U.S. is not the best, but we're definitely better than China. I don't know if that's saying much. The best people who do a really good job at soil prevention, or soil erosion prevention, is Europe. But Europe has the money. Probably one of the worst places you'll see is in Africa. Yeah. On the Sahel right there, right where the Sahara is, you'll see these countries, they really struggle in soil erosion and desertification. They're really bad. But the U.S. we're not bad in comparison to other countries.
Thank you.
How much of the NRCS's efforts are actually dedicated towards combating soil erosion?
I would say a bit.
The majority, or?
Well, everything is connected. If we go back to our concerns, it started off soil erosion was the primary thing as a result of the Dust Bowl. But, as we become more educated and we get out into the field a little bit more, we see that these are all interrelated. Well, why do we have soil erosion? Bare land, you're going across it too much, it's dry, there's no moisture, no organic matter in the soil. All of these things come into play. So when you're focusing on soil, you may also most likely will have to look at these other factors and see how you can bring them all together so that you can try to solve that one issue that you were focusing on.
Would you say that any one area is a bigger focus than another? Like, what would be the main focus you think, or is it just kind of a mixture of everything in the agriculture, or?
It's a mixture of everything. Definitely soil erosion. If you're losing your soil, what do we have? We can't grow crops. We can't grow our food. So that's definitely important. If you focus on soil, you can work on those other ones.
I know you mentioned wind breaks as a solution, like trees or wherever, to kind of break the wind on the farm, but when it comes to soil erosion, or when it comes to the wind blowing the soil away, we were talking about earlier, is there really any way to combat that, or is it just we have to come to grips with the fact that some places are meant for agriculture and some aren't?
That's an excellent point. Some places maybe not. But as Chad was saying, because people want to live in an ideal area, you may lose, those areas that are ideal agricultural land, and you have to, pretty much get land wherever you can. One practice that we try to use is called cover crop, or conservation cover. So instead of keeping the land bare, we'll try to plant something to keep it covered between crop rotations, or people may grow, alfalfa is a great cover crop. You're getting your hay off it. You can take a couple of cuttings a year, but you've got that soil covered. It's not being disturbed. You're not losing soil.
Now, is that, because they said in between rotations, is it just for in between rotations, or is it, we're not going to use this land for farming some people's land, they're going to plant alfalfa that way, the wind kills soil to blow in another county or something?
Both. So you can use a cover crop during rotations. You have your primary crop being grown in the summer, and you might plant something over the winter, like winter wheat. In some areas, maybe not so much here in the desert, but I'm speaking to my experience in Wisconsin. Wisconsin. And one of the programs that we have, it may be used in maybe the northern part of California, not in this area, but CRP is the Conservation Reserve Program. And that program, it sort of provides an incentive for private landowners to keep land out of agricultural production. I know we're talking about, hey, you know, we want to grow food, we need to have land available, but we do have this program available that allows you to have cover and try to restore an area to its previous native state. So, you know, you may plant grasses and things of that nature, some forbs.
Now, is that program just for land that has been used and you want to store it, or is that for land that you don't use at all?
That could be for land you don't want to use at all. With that program, if you sign up for the Conservation Reserve Program to keep cover on your property, it's up to 10-15 years. So up to 10-15 years, there's no agriculture going on at all. So once you decide to commit to that, you kind of have to commit to it, or else there might be a little penalty if you choose to back out and you know, go back into production.
Hey guys, the questions are really awesome, but let Marian just finish. Because,
these are great.
No, I've actually, I was actually sitting. I've never had this problem before.
No, this
you guys they've all done such a good job of getting thing, and you guys are a great fun. Let Marian get through, because some of these questions, actually, the whole panel could take little pieces of, right? So like that cover crop question is an awesome one, keeping stuff out and restoring. But we could actually, these guys could actually give local examples of that Marian maybe not quite as familiar with because of being new to the area.
Like I said, I just moved here in February, so I'm still learning what are some things that you know we do here in the desert.
Okay. No,
it's still amazing to me that we're from
It's easy to talk
Marian,
to.
you know?
I said you're easy to talk to. Like all these ideas and questions come up.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that.
The fact you get all these questions means you're doing a great job, not the opposite.
All right, thank you. All right, so we'll move ahead. Like I said, the questions you guys are asking are coming up in a couple of slides, and then some that I don't have, so I do appreciate that. Again, we have an office in each county. Sometimes you may have my boss, Holly Sherelator, who may serve 3 counties just because, you know, one county may be, you know, for a heavy forest area. So it all depends on that. So again, some of the things we do, and we've discussed this, we provide technical advice to landowners. Again, we want to go out there, assess the situation, see how we can help before we can say, oh, we've got these programs that you can participate in. Let's see how we can give you some money to, you know, fix the problem. We kind of want to see what's going on out there before we talk about incentive programs. Again, educating people on conservation practices, collaborating with other local, state, and federal agencies. It's awesome when you have those partnerships and you can work together, things that you might not be familiar with, or if you're just moving to an area and you're trying to learn, just working with those other agencies so that you can become more knowledgeable of what's going on. And outreach to underrepresented and underserved communities. That's another aim for the agency, particularly producers or private landowners with whom we worked with in the past, primarily Caucasian men. So we definitely want to make sure that other producers, private landowners out there who may not happen to fall into that, you know, box of Caucasian male, understand that we're here to help, and if they need any technical assistance, we can provide that for them. So we definitely do outreach. So, with providing our technical assistance and going out to visit these producers, one of the things that we want to focus on is developing a conservation plan. So a conservation plan is pretty much practices that come together. It's an agreement or an agreement with the producer saying, hey, this is what I want to do on my property. again, and if that needs to change, that's fine also. It's not like a legal binding document. It changes. You know, producers know that things change just like that. You may say, hey, I want to grow, you know, again, I'm going back to Wisconsin. I want to grow, you know, corn for 2 years, and then I'll grow soybeans for a year, and I may grow potatoes after that. Well, you might change up and say, hey, I want to do corn, soybeans, whatever the case may be. And that's kind of flexible with that. So we just want to make sure that you've got something in place where you're thinking about those practices where you're reducing the potential for soil loss or increased soil loss. And, you know, going to the second bullet point, the planning is back and forth. If we say, hey, let's see if this will work, you know, sort of a trial and error. Most times that's how things work. Let's see if this will work, if this will help solve the problem. If not, we may try to add a couple more practices, do something more, you know, for a long period of time. It all depends. So, you know, going out there and kind of assessing the land and seeing what the problem is, that's a really big part of developing a conservation plan. So now we're getting into the programs, and we've talked about this. So I will apologize. Again, my presentation is stolen. I don't have all of the practices that we have in here, but we will talk about them as I go. So one of the main programs that we use is called EQIP, the Environmental Quality Incentives Program. And it's a cost share program. I like to say financial assistance. It's not a grant. Sometimes people come into the office and say, hey, you know, I heard about this grant. You know, so that means you got free money available. Not quite. It's not a grant. It's definitely a process, a competition. Maybe I shouldn't say competition. There's a process by which one can get selected to receive assistance, and it's a long drawn out. If someone wants to know about that, we can talk about that later. But there's a process that you have to go through. So with EQIP, if we do our technical assistance, we go out and we assess the property, we find out what the concerns are. And a producer says, hey, yeah, you know I have this problem. I want to try to fix it, you know, as best I can. We take a look at it and say, hey, you know, with the EQIP program, we might be able to provide some financial assistance. Sometimes we're implementing practices or, you know, updating or upgrading your irrigation system. It might be a little bit pricey, and the producer might not be able to pay for everything right away. So that's where we come in. We want to provide them a little bit of financial assistance or provide cost share that will help them implement that practice. You know, to say here, provide financial assistance to help the producer get conservation on the ground. So, once we meet with that producer, we decide on a couple of things that will help them solve the issue. We don't focus on one thing. As I stated before, we want to look at the whole system. We want to look at their entire area to make sure that we address all of the resource concerns. You know, they may come in and say, hey, you know, my crops are not getting enough water. I'm having issues with my pump. I want to replace my pump. Well, you know, soil conservationists may go out there to assess the area. You may also have an engineer go out there, and they will, you know, run some tests on your pump, on your irrigation system. Want to see how efficiently your water is coming out and moving through the irrigation system, through your pipes, through your tubing, what have you. And if they find that that needs to be replaced also, then you're upgrading the whole system and you're not just replacing the pump. You know, if you say, hey, I just want to replace my pump, but your tubing or the nozzles that are on your tubing aren't efficient, then, you know, you're not really working to solve the problem as best you can. So you get all that together, and we develop the conservation plan, where you have an opportunity to be approved, so that conservation plan can turn into a contract. With contracts, providing financial assistance, you can have a practice or practices that can be implemented within the first year. Again, if this is too much, if you guys have questions, please feel free to ask questions. Say, hey, okay, hurry up and move through that, or whatever the case may be. It doesn't matter. A minimum of 1 year. That's the length of a contract. It can go up to 10 years. Beyond that, I think we may want to split things up and sign up later on. So, cost share. Most times we can provide up to 75%. So let's say, you know, if you need to get a new pump and it costs you, I'm not sure how much it costs, let's say $5,000. You don't have $5,000 to spend right away. We can provide some type of financial assistance to help pay for 75% of that, or to reimburse you. The way that our program works, you have to pay for that first. So if you feel that you need a pump, you have to buy it, and then we will reimburse you. We reimburse you 75% of what that item costs. Sometimes you can get up to 90% of that total cost sort of reimbursed back to you. And that 90%, that's for our historically underserved. So those are our beginning farmers, people who have just started farming within the last 10 years. Individuals with limited resources, they may not have enough money to implement these conservation practices, or persons of color who are maybe just starting out, or, you know, again, they weren't part of that Caucasian male that we primarily served in years past. They may receive up to 90% cost share. One of the things that we definitely want to express that, you know, it's definitely a long process to go from the initial visit to getting a contract, and we understand that producers are anxious to implement those practices and get that conservation on the ground. But one thing that we try to stress is that, you know, don't purchase anything before your contract is approved, because if you buy it thinking, oh, NRCS is going to provide me this amount of money, we can't do it. That's kind of one of the rules that we have with our program. Wait until we give you the go-ahead to purchase those things that we can help you with, and then, you know, we want to make sure that everything's okay, because we don't want a producer to take on those expenses without, you know, being able to get that assistance if they can. So, some of the common practices that are in this area. Irrigation system improvement, we've talked about that. And we've talked about a number of these, but, you know, just so you guys can get a picture of it and kind of the definition of each practice. Improving and making sure that you efficiently and uniformly apply irrigation water so that you can maintain soil moisture. Sometimes it may be a little difficult in the area, but that's where those other practices come into place, where you're making sure that you are applying the water when you need it and applying how much you need. Irrigation water management, again, determining the amount of water that you need, the rate, if you need it, when you need it, things of that nature. Wildlife structures. Structure design and installed specifically for fish or wildlife. People may install this because they may find out that there may be an endangered species, some type of bird that's on the endangered species list, or a bird may be flying, you know, from north to south, migration, and may stop in an area. They want to have a perch or a box available for them to rest there so they can see them. Just a number of things that might be available for this structure, or why it may be needed. Nutrient management. This is definitely a big one across the board. Not really, it doesn't matter what area you're in. With nutrient management, we want to make sure that with the fertilizer or the manure that we're applying to our crops, we want to make sure that we're applying exactly what we need. We want to apply it when we need it, how much we need, and what type. You know, sometimes, you know, there's been research where some people have split it up. You know, you decide when is the best time for a crop to take in that to take in those nutrients. So you kind of want to place those nutrients at that ideal moment, or hopefully at that ideal moment where the crops will take it up. If you've gone beyond that stage, you're just applying it, and the crops don't need it, then you're losing it. So it gets washed away, or it leaches into the groundwater. So nutrient management is definitely important. Windbreaks and hedgerows, we talked about that a little bit earlier. This is just a picture. It's establishment of this vegetation in a linear design to achieve natural resource conservation. This can help with wind erosion. It can hold back particles in areas where it snows. It could be a living snow fence as a noise barrier. Using the nature windbreak serves a lot of purposes. Mulching, applying plant residue or other suitable materials produced off-site to a specific area. Right now, I'm working with a few producers who are using mulching. They have areas, well, they're using it for a couple of reasons. They have areas where they're growing, it's an orchard, so they've got areas that are bare, and they're losing some of their topsoil due to wind erosion. So they want to apply some mulching to try to cover that up, because at this point they can't grow a cover crop, because if they do, then they'll have to use more water, and we're trying to reduce the need of water. So they want to apply mulching. Also with windbreaks, some of the producers are installing windbreaks. So to get that established, they are doing irrigation water management. They're having micro irrigation, which is water coming through tubings with little, drips with the nozzle. And they're putting water just where they're planting those trees, and they're applying mulching around that to make sure that they suppress the weeds, and also make sure that they got a little bit of moisture retained in that area as those trees and shrubs are developing or are establishing. Seasonal high tone. This is a big one. You guys may have seen this as you've been driving around. Seasonal polyethylene covered structure that is used to cover crops and extend the growing season. And this one is really ideal for individuals who particularly grow crops just during the summer. If they want to try to extend it later in the fall or the winter if need be, or get an early start in the spring, they can use the seasonal high tone as well, so that they're having food available for their families, and for the local farmers market if they are choosing to provide produce in that way.
My question is this something that like a residential family can get? Because I do a lot of community cropping. My crops at home are for my whole community. Mm-hmm. Is this something that I would be able to go through the process and try to obtain to extend my crops, to be able to extend for my community?
Yes. Yep. Those would be valid reasons why someone will want to come in and fill in an application to get a seasonal high tunnel or hoop house. We typically call it a hoop house. Yeah.
How large does the area have to be? Like, my neighbor might if I'm at home and I'm like, oh, my neighbor grows juniper beets. I want to grow juniper beets. How long do they have to be there? Like, how long do I have to have the plant there? Or I don't. Okay, let's say I just have like a little tiny garden.
Okay.
But I want to expand, right? I want to grow billions of juniper beets.
Billion.
Can I ask help from the NRCS to help get me started, or is it just for people who are already established there?
You kind of have to be established a little bit. We don't necessarily help people get started. No, we don't. You have to be established a little bit. It depends on what you want to do, the practices. Growing jujube beans, and you established that, and you found out that your irrigation system wasn't working, your drip tape. We would not be able to help you fix that if you hadn't been, or if it hadn't been installed, 2 years prior. So they're a little bit, there are a few stipulations, but we can definitely help you fix that.
What
You
about
wanna
like
commit.
the area criteria? Oh, I have 10 usually plants that have been there for 10 years. Like, that's not a whole lot, but yet I all else do these at the farmer's market, but what's the criteria?
If you state that you've been growing crop and you're selling it, then you might be eligible to participate in our programs. If you say you've got some cropland, you've got area, you want to extend that, maybe get a hoop house or a seasonal high tunnel, you might be able to apply for that. Yep. Again, that goes with coming into the office, talking to the conservationists on staff, and we go out and assess. Yep.
But don't you have to have a certain amount of land first? Like a
Certain amount of land.
yeah. Like you can't just have like a little square footage, right?
Well, not necessarily in your backyard, but then again, it depends on how big your backyard is. Before you want it's kind of a tough one. It depends. If you want to have about an acre of cropland, that would definitely be a requirement. But with the hoop house, you can get that total square footage or max square footage that we could pay for is 3846 square feet. So you can get larger than that, you can get smaller than that. We can possibly provide some financial assistance. So it all depends. Again, it's we have to come out there and take a look. 3846, 3,846 square feet. That's the maximum that our agency will provide financial assistance. Okay. And these are just some of the, Holly Strelator, she's my supervisor. Kim Larry, she's in Riverside, or she's not in Riverside, she's in Redlands. And she sort of does some of the same things. She helps out with some of the people in our county as well. So do you guys have any more questions about other programs? We talked about EQIP, we talked about CRP, Conservation Reserve Program. We also have, within EQIP, we have different initiatives. So right now, what we are focusing on is called, one initiative is the National Air Quality Initiative, where we're focusing on decreasing particulate matter, decreasing air pollution. Should I have a question?
Yeah, I think it's
Okay. We've got the National Organic Initiative. That's where producers deciding, hey, I've been producing crops on my farm for quite a while, and I've been using pesticides and all these chemicals. I think I want to, become organic for whatever reason. One might decide to, grow organically. We have a program. A person can sign up and participate in that and possibly get financial assistance. Let's see, we've got the Energy Initiative. If a person has an old engine that might be using diesel, they can say, hey, I've got this, it's inefficient. We might be able to provide financial assistance to get that replaced so that they can, possibly get an electric pump, something that's a little bit more efficient and doesn't use as much energy. Let's see, I'm trying to think of something else. Can't remember right off the top. Okay, you wanna?
Yeah, all these programs sound really awesome. I'm sure a lot of us have our own little gardens, right? We want to do more, that's why we're in this class. Are there any, do you collaborate with any other programs that, like a community outreach, or do you have, and I know in one of your slides said that you guys provide education. I'm sure for bigger agricultural farmers, but are there any resources that we can tap into? Just our home gardens or stuff we might want to bring to farmers market, any programs like that that you know of?
That I'm not aware of, but if there are questions or concerns like that, we may refer someone to an extension. UCD's extension, they may be able to provide you some information. Again, you know, it takes talking.
Okay, go ahead, sorry.
Okay. Again, not a problem. No, again, it takes coming and chatting with us, and then we can see how we may be able to help. And if we can't, you know, we can definitely refer you to individuals who can assist.
So they also, NRCS, NRCD also partner with other people. And so one of the people they partner with us, that's why they're here, and that's why we work together on a lot of things. And so they'll have special workshops. They're getting ready to have a special workshop on drip irrigation. But then we have classes, soil science classes. The kind of thing you're looking for is our natural landscaping class that deals with all kinds of landscaping, but also food production. So we have some, I know you're not in our department, so you're not aware of those, but there are actual very focused classes here, and then certain special programs in the community, and so they act as a bit of a clearinghouse to point people to those kinds of things. So, Chad had a comment.
Okay.
No, and you kind of summed up with some of the other outreach. I know the USDA, they have an office out in Palmdale. They have some programs for, you know, beginning or if you want to start in the ag industry as far as, you know, loans, low interest rate loans and stuff. I don't know what the whole criteria is, but I know they've had some programs for, you know, young beginning farmers who are wanting to get into it. But as far as, you know, as far as just technical advice, you know, the extension and as Neville said, workshops for the extension, you can just go on California University Extension website. You can pick the crop you want. You can get all the info you need to.
With one of our sister agencies called the Farm Service Agency, you can check with them, and sometimes they have micro loans. If one is not able to, or may not be able to get financing from a bank, you can check with FSA, and they can provide you, or they can assist you with applying for a micro loan, and you can get started that way. You know, if there are some things you want to do.
A couple of questions, actually. One. Now the NRCS is it basically a funding mechanism for commercial growers and commercial agriculture?
We work primarily with private landowners. Some of the producers do have partnerships with like Del Monte, things of that nature.
So you do work for agricultural companies that aren't for profit, right? You said private landowners? Private landowners. Do they have to be, so they're not necessarily commercial, or are they just private and commercial, or do you, and basically do you, like if I were to have a plot of land, and I were, you know, just have my own homestead or whatnot, and I wasn't necessarily selling it, and we having a co-op, would you help out with something like that, or do you mostly help out with commercial?
I'm going to say we don't help with co-ops. I've not seen that. However, let me just say, if a person has private land and they're growing crops and they say, hey, we're providing this for the community, we're selling it, whatever the case may be, and you want to get a hoop house, you can apply for that. If the land is in your name, you sign up for it. How you sell your produce, you know, but, you know, particularly private landowners, I haven't seen anything in my experience where we've worked with commercial growers.
When you do grant funding to whatever grower, is there any like kind of safeguards that you put in place in order to make sure that the money that you funded them with is going to where it was intended to go to?
Yes. So that's one of the things we do. If a person comes in, gets a conservation plan, and it gets approved, and it moves towards the contract, you say, hey, I want to do this practice, and based on the contract, I need to have it installed or implemented by May of 2016. If they call and say, hey, Marian, you know, I'm about to install my pipeline. You want to come on here and check. So we need to go out there to confirm that it's actually been completed. So it's not like, oh, you got this, just let us know, or we'll, you know, refund you the money. We have to go out there to confirm that it has been completed and that it meets our requirements, our standards and specifications. So if something is being installed or implemented, NRCS has practice standards that one must follow in order to receive that financial assistance. We have to check it off. Engineers have to redline it. Maybe not so much now, but back in the day, they really had to say, you know, this meets standards, and they'd sign with a red ink saying this meets, and if it didn't, you would receive that financial assistance.
So the assistance is basically a reimbursement?
Yep, you have to pay for everything up front, and then we provide that, that financial assistance.
But only after we meet with you and set a plan.
Yep, afterwards.
Don't jump the gun.
Yep.
So maybe, you still got some more slides?
Just a couple more slides.
I was just going to open it up.
That was like, hurry up.
No, it's not.
Well, no, we talked about the agency, and you know, there's a lot more that goes into the agency. Feel free to stop by the office, give me a call. I've got a couple of business cards that I brought with me. Check out our website. There's a slew of information, and it may be a little too much to take in at one site. What does this mean, or can you explain this to me? We can definitely do that. That's why I'm here. But the last thing that I wanted to share with you, with the agency, as we continue to grow and get better, we need new, young, energetic people coming in who have great ideas and experience to further the mission of the agency. So ways that people can participate is volunteer, or you can serve as an intern. One of your fellow classmates serves as a volunteer or team volunteer, and I've got a couple of packets or pamphlets with me. You can take that with you if you want to read through it. If you decide at some point you want to volunteer with the agency, just a number of things that you guys can help out with. And I forgot to type in other duties as assigned, because that does come up, and you'll find that some of you are finding that in some of your own professions, your own jobs, that other duties as assigned is like 5%, turns out to be like 95. So this, as a volunteer, anyone can volunteer 14 and over. And as an intern, you're currently enrolled in school. Your focus is on ag business, ag management, or IT. You know, it all depends if you feel that you can measure with the agency, or you can provide your expertise within the agency. You can sign up for an internship. And I'm just running through this, but we've got the website. Again, if you have questions, you can chat with me a little bit. Deanna is working as a volunteer with us. She comes in once a week and does a great job, and we really do appreciate having her there to help us out. And we got Mr. Ricardo here, who is with us this summer, who is serving as an intern, a Pathways intern. A few years ago, the program was called STEP. I started off as a STEP student, but they've changed it to Pathways, and it has become quite competitive to be selected as an intern. So they've changed things a little bit, and I think that's good. Change is good, as they say. So I've got information. If you guys have questions, I have my card available. You can call me, send an email, or whatever. We always have to put this wonderful message up there. The agency does not discriminate. All right. So you guys have any questions?
Let's open it up. We got about 10 minutes to open it up for questions to Chad and to Marian or Dino, or if you want to talk about horses, I can answer your question.
So, you guys got any other questions?
I have
Did
a
you
question.
get it all out of your system?
I have a question for Mr.
Good.
Technology over here. I want to find out if there is some type of database that I can link up with on seed collecting to help me manage information for seed collecting. Do you know anything?
No, not.
Oh, you're fired, forget it.
No, Steve, no.
You don't know.
But I'm sure.
In our
there is.
NRCS, and Marian should be give you more information, has a general. You're talking native seeds or vegetable seeds?
To help with the seed bank here?
Restoration, yeah.
Yeah, the restoration.
We've got a seed. I've actually got a seed bank here. So, NRCS has a site, and so you just go on, and it's got a lot about propagation techniques, all the different scarification and all the different techniques for growing that you guys we touched on the other day, and you guys are learning in the horticulture lab. And then they also, in that site, I'm pretty sure they have a little section on seed collection. It's kind of a database on, let's say, rabbit brush. They've got a database on kind of how to collect the seed, mostly how to grow it. And actually, in the past, our students did research, and this is what would be really cool, Rochelle, is as you're collecting a certain seed, I know you guys went out yesterday, right? As you're collecting certain seed, what we did before is when we were into restoration in a big way, our students were uploading information back onto that site about how to grow certain plants, how to collect the seed. And so it's a really cool two-way street, but I'm pretty sure they've got a little bit of information on there.
I got the information from the forestry yesterday.
Yeah.
So I am going to try and collaborate with Lynn and try and get our seed bank inventory kind of together and hopefully.
Did she also mention, yes, somebody that could tell you. I'm going to turn this question over to Wendy. I'm sorry, I forgot she was even
Yeah,
here.
they have a big book on it, on the seeds and collecting them. I don't know if you've seen it. It's like a notebook, has a DVD. It's like
yeah, I've seen it, yeah.
I don't know if that would
Field trip.
And then Rancho Santa Ana Botanical Garden has that awesome seed collection part to what they do.
Yeah.
And have you guys gone on a field trip there yet?
I used to live across the street. I used to go there all the time.
Right, but they would, when we started our seed collection, they have seed training classes, and that's how we actually used Hort Lab one year in the summer to get our seed thing going. So I probably should have shared a little bit more of those resources with Lindy and stuff, but you can pass them on.
Okay, cool.
Yes, Mike, go ahead.
Yeah, I have a question for you actually. As far as like GM seeds go, is it cheaper? Is a crop that's grown with GM seeds cheaper than a crop that's grown without GM seeds? And are GM seeds generally cheaper, or more, do you know what the cost ratio between?
Generally, GM seeds are a little bit more because they have more investment into them as far as technology goes. A little bit more into them. It's not cost prohibitive, but generally, it depends on your area and the crop. Depends on your area and the crop too, but generally, they can be cheaper to grow because oftentimes you apply less pesticides. That's the main thing.
Cheaper in the long run, basically.
In the long run,
but,
yeah.
But the initial purchase of the seeds
it's
are
more,
actually
a higher upfront cost, but now your herbicide might cost might be half of what it would have been conventional. Again, it depends on the area, but generally, that's generally the reason why people go for them is, your production costs are down, or not only that, it's easier to produce, or you can produce a higher yielding crop. You have, you can use, safer, softer chemicals, less chemicals.
How does that translate to, how does that translate to the consumer then? Does the consumer end up paying more for GM crops?
That's all in market price, and that's where, it's really try and market, if initiative, gets passed as far as we're labeling GMO, then that would be a different price. But right now, it's all goes to the, the open market. Basically, it's whatever the market price is. Like for hay, it really doesn't matter if it was produced with a GMO seed or not. It's the price is the same. If you're trying to do certain things like export it, there's certain criteria. Because most countries they don't take GMO. Not the country don't take GMO crops, but it's just a domestic market. It depends on your market really.
Well, I was thinking that since GM seeds might lower production costs, then for that reason perhaps it's cheaper, or if they're more expensive, then perhaps for that reason I figured maybe profit more expensive.
Yeah. I mean, it all comes into like. Again, it depends on the crop. Different crops are driven. The market's driven by different ways. You know, like corn. Say everyone does grow GM crops, and you have a bumper corn crop. Okay, now corn is going to be less next year. The price of corn is going to go down. So yeah, but at the same time, we're losing land. There's less land to grow it on, so now it still becomes more valuable the more you can grow. And you know, the demand, world population, all that starts to increase. There's supply and demand is what it comes down to really. So it's not like, oh, it's a GMO land. It's not like, oh, I grew this field, I grew for less, so I'm going to sell it for less. No, you're going to sell it for whatever you can get the highest dollar on the market. So it's supply and demand essentially. Yeah. Unless it's a value-added product or it's marketed, organic or something like that. You're marketing it as there might be a different price point, but otherwise price is different factors.
Since it doesn't necessarily make it cheaper for the consumer, wouldn't that just be basically for the benefit of the grower then?
No, I wouldn't say that. I mean, if
they'll undercut each other.
Yeah, it's just basically laws of supply and demand. I mean,
if you just look at one way, the main way GM's being looked at right now on food crops. So alfalfa would be a little different, but let's say we're looking at corn, is health, right? What's interesting about the conversation is the GM corn, and I haven't done the research myself, but tons of students do. We haven't made a direct correlation between GM corn and health problems. There's no in-depth peer-reviewed study that I know of that's done it. So, but there's a big concern, and I think there's a valid concern. We're not discounting it. But what's interesting, you just heard a couple of things that's never talked about, is if I grow GM corn, I'm going to use way less pesticide, which is a established health concern that could make it into the final product, right? Or could blow over into the town that's next door. I'm going to use less herbicide, way less herbicide for some of these GM products, right? If it's a Roundup Ready kind of a thing. But those are major health benefits. Do you see what I'm saying? So it's this very complicated mixture. If you're going to look, is GM corn really valid? I would say, my opinion, if you want to know my opinion, in the United States, often it is just ease of production and maybe some more profit, and I think that's maybe a valid point, but we need to balance everything. In other countries, if we're talking corn, in Africa, where I'm from, and we are going to only grow it in areas that are going to desert and getting drier and drier, and GM corn's the only thing grows, and that's all those people eat, well then it's only GM corn. I'm sorry, I don't care what else the problem is. Those people are either going to starve or they're going to eat GM corn, because there's a subsistence farmers in everywhere down into Central Africa. And so GM corn is this incredible, if you look at the whole sustainable picture, GM corn in that one situation is as sustainable as you can get. Do you see what I'm saying? When you really balance it all into place, especially the human factor.
Absolutely. I mean, I eat, I'd rather not, but I do eat GM foods here in the States, and everybody else does pretty much, even people who are against it.
But what,
they're going to eat some.
Right.
But it's just a matter of whether what kind of options we have if we choose not to consume it. I mean, and the question really was, like you kind of touched on it earlier, was the fact that it's really for the profit of the grower. And I mean, only in certain situations. Yeah. Well, I mean, that's how it would be in California. Perhaps in like some countries in Africa where people are starving to death and you don't have any other means of food. Yeah, I can totally understand that.
But what's interesting about it is that's how it's projected, and that's probably what's happening. But I would like to see if we really look at a huge study of a big area with less pesticides and less herbicides being used, is it actually even healthier? That's the interesting kinds of things we want to talk about. We don't know. GM's new, and there's lots of potential dangers with it. But you know, we don't have the science behind it yet, is all I'm saying. And so we often go off what we see on a YouTube video, and it's a lot of that is information that's not very well researched, and it kind of gets people off on a way out here, when if they really looked at it in the broad picture, they would say, oh, okay, we need to look at GM is a potential sustainable practice. And like I said, in certain conditions, it's hands down for me. In others, I would say no, I'm not sure why we grow GM corn necessarily in this country all the time. Especially when we're using corn to make ethanol, which is totally unsustainable, right? Then what the heck are we doing here? That doesn't make sense to me personally. Right, Chad? Weigh in on that. I'm sorry.
And most all the corn, I mean, I don't know the percentage, but more than half of it's all GMO grown now.
Right.
And it's not as there's not a huge profit there. The seed's more, so really it's almost a wash. But when you look at everything else, you're spraying a few less times. Not only are you saving on the herbicide, less fuel, and then less time. And it's hard to explain. And from my point of view, trying to get out what I'm thinking, but it's all relative. I don't want to say it makes farming easier, but I mean, I say, yeah, more sustainable for sure. I mean, less pesticides, less passes in the field, and all that. And again, now with the new seeds, you can grow it in areas you normally can't grow it. And right there's a huge, huge benefit. Someone have a question? Yeah.
To follow up, GM crops have reduced the variability that comes to farming. So part of the reason that farming tends to be a very difficult business is because of the variability in crop production. So what GM crops do is they have there's a little bit more reliability, right? And it's hard for farmers to say, okay, they're going to make more profit this year compared to next year, you know what I mean? Because there's so much variability in crop production and crop yield. And what GM crops do is they allow for a little bit more consistency, right? Because they're genetically engineered. So they actually take into account crop cycles, growth, and stuff like that. So there's a little bit more consistency with the farmers. Farmers tend to struggle a lot in regards to variability of crops. And so from the farmer's perspective, they probably like GM crops not because they think it's wonderful or great. It gives them a chance to kind of have consistency, right, in how crops are produced. And in regards to the markets and market prices, remember a lot of these things are fixed in advance. Crops and agriculture have what's called a futures market. And a lot of the fuel, a lot of the crops, a lot of the supplies, the pesticides are all fixed 6 months to a year in advance. And so you got to understand if this gentleman here, he buys pesticides or he buys certain agriculture, he buys certain things 6 months to a year in advance, and then crop prices fall, his fixed assets are still at that cost. He can't reduce them like a normal company. Does that make sense? Normal companies, they start losing, if the prices fall, they lose profit. What do they start doing? Cutting back on employees, right? Cutting back on this, cutting back on that. Farmers can't do that. They have what's called sunk costs. And when these costs are then sunk, it's very difficult to recover them. It's actually what happened in the Dust Bowl. That's why her job exists. Because what happened is because of the variability, right, in crop yields, farmers couldn't survive. They actually gave up on their farms, got all the jalopies, and came over here for that prime reason. So GM crops, you always want to do that cost-benefit analysis, right? We don't know what the costs are health-wise. Economics-wise, the benefits are that they reduce variability in crop yield, and that's a big deal for farmers. Now, does that outweigh the cost to our health? I'm not sure, because we don't know what the costs to our health are yet. Neville's right, we don't know yet. We could.
Yeah.
We could, I don't know.
Yeah. In the most variable, crazy industry, right? So you're watching the sky all the time, wondering when the next big hailstorm's going to come and just wipe you out completely. That doesn't happen to Walmart. You know, they don't get wiped out in one afternoon. It's extremely tough business.
That's like when you say, oh, well, if you're growing it for more, you need stuff for less. That offends me actually, because there's years you lose a whole farm, and then you open bacon on the next year, you basically just pay your debt off from the previous year. So as far as it's all based on the market, and the farmer growing, each area is different. And corn's a whole different ball game too, but corn, you don't get to say, okay, I grew it for less, I'll sell it for this. It's what the market is really. I mean, sure, you can always sell it for less if you wanted to, but you need to make the most you can out of it. But every year is different, and you don't know what it's going to do, what the weather's going to like. You know, the drought. A couple of years ago, that's why corn prices went up so high. There was a drought, and the corn maintenance, so prices were sky high. But that's if you had any corn. Most guys didn't have any corn, so then a good weather year, it does well. There's high supply of it, like right now, and the corn outlook's looking good. All the prices are low.
Yeah, limes are sky high. Limes are sky high right now.
Yes, they are.
Yeah, because what was it? Something.
There was a freeze Yeah. And every crop's different.
I mean, what are we going to do? How are we going to drink our beer? That's ridiculous.
Beer.
Come on. That's serious stuff. So, any other questions for these folks? This has been a really cool
I guess
session.
one quick story on the GM. You know, I chose to plant the first time I tried a GM alfalfa, Roundup Ready alfalfa. And the only reason I did, I have great results using conventional chemicals and herbicides. I mean, everything's great. It works out great program. But there's one weed called dodder. It's actually a parasitic weed. It attaches itself to the alfalfa plant and sucks the life out of it. It'll kill, just devour a stand. It looks like a string too. It just attaches to itself and sucks it out. Well, there's not a whole lot of chemicals that effectively kill it, and that effectively kill it, period. But Roundup will. So I had in one particular field, and just this one field, I had a horrendous problem with dodder. So I planted Roundup Ready alfalfa, and now instead of having to spray, I mean, we even tried. You burn it. You throw everything you can at it. You come in and we have to mow it every time and do everything you can. Now I can come in and Roundup, spray it. Hey, it's gone. So and then.
What happens to the Roundup?
What's that?
It goes into the earth, right?
No, the Roundup it's as far as the half-life goes, things just
it dissipates and degrades pretty quickly.
Yeah.
It does?
Yeah.
But there's a good example actually of Roundup. Again, there's a lot out there that says Roundup, is some carcinogen that lasts forever. As far as we know, we use it in very sensitive areas with weed management. We use when we go tomorrow, we'll stop at some of our tamarisk removal sites. We use a herbicide right in the riverbed that is extremely, it's a Roundup, extremely high concentration, very strong Roundup. Forget the name, what's it called?
The master?
Yeah, there's another one. But anyway, it's right in the Mojave River. After we've cut the tamarisk trees to kill them from there, and it's approved for that. And so in these cases we're working off. I'm not a chemist either, but we're working off really good science. That in the United States, around a water source, they're not going to let that happen. That's all I can tell you. The science is there. But if you get on the internet, there's a lot of information out there. Of course, Roundup's made by Monsanto, so it has to be bad, right?
Well, that's what I'm thinking.
Yeah, but be careful, because there's a lot of hype. All we're trying to show you, there's always two sides to these things, right? And what you get on the internet is not well researched. It's not put out by people that have actually done the work. It's stuff that they do for hype. Not always, but there's a lot of bad information. We live in that age, so that's why we do workshops like this. So you guys get the base education, then you can make your own decisions. That's all I'm pointing out to you. I'm not an expert on Roundup. I'm totally okay with it, because if the U.S. Department of Agriculture allows us, we have to get special permits to spray it on weeds that are right next to our water source. It's not gonna last in our water supply. It's got a half-life. I can't remember what it is, but it's not very long. Okay, so.
When you get that kind, do you have to
wear
a mask?
I understand, but they're all trade-offs, right? And actually, you have to wear a mask these days to use dish soap. Come on, everything's a carcinogen. We're in a crazy world, right? So just do the research. Always, like we talk about, everyone has to do projects in our classes, research project. Get real research from peer-reviewed folks that do research, not from the daily press. I'm sorry, kind of mad at them at the moment. Not from the daily press or from something on the internet that you did a search on. And all you're going to pull up there is the most inflammatory, the most hyped article is what you're most likely going to see. And they don't know what they're talking about. They mostly don't. Sorry, guys. And if you're going to base your decisions in life on that, then you're going to be in trouble. And we are doing now a lot of that on society. We introduced the proposition Proposition 2 on animal cruelty, on how we raise animals, chickens and pigs and all that. And that was all based on a lot of bad information that some folks put out.
And we've made a very bad choice on that law, in my opinion. If you come to our animal science class, we'll talk about that in great detail. And I'm not going to change your mind. Remember, we started this class by saying we need all these opinions, and we need people that engage. And you guys are here because you're engaged, and that's cool. What we're worried about, the people that aren't even asking any of these questions that are sitting on the couch. Exactly. Because then these decisions are being made for them. And as a society, we're in trouble because we have scarce resources and we have to manage them better. Chad, sorry.
And back to the Roundup thing, applying Roundup one time, which is something you can go buy at Home Depot, I can spray that instead of 3 harsher chemicals that have a higher toxicity. I can eliminate those from my rotation. But at the same token, though, Roundup isn't the solve all. If you spray Roundup time after time after time after time, weeds can build up resistance too. You still have to rotate your chemicals. It's not the golden ticket by any means, but you still have to rotate your chemicals. And then like the Monsanto thing, I know that there's some video or movie out that just paints a horrible picture how they treat farmers horribly. I had a cousin come home one day from his college class and tell me, "Yeah, Chad, I'm so sorry how Monsanto treats you when you do this and that." And I said, "Whoa, what are you talking about? I love Monsanto. I think they are great. Their technology, their breeding and research, everything they do for the industry, they are great. I buy a lot of their products, and I'm not forced to buy their products. I'm not forced to sign agreements like they paint it to, and I have to buy their seed. No, there's other choices out there, but what they do for the industry is, magnificent. And really, they're feeding the world, the technology that goes into it. They don't only do biotech stuff; they do traditional breeding as well, and all of that. So.
Dina, do you want to weigh in on because that sounds like politics to me.
Yeah, I can. There is a legitimate sense of fear among the community about things they don't understand.
Right.
Yes. And so I think what you've seen is folks like in Europe, what they do is most of the European Union countries have banned genetically engineered foods or genetically modified foods, and have banned most Monsanto products that have to deal with that, primarily because they're employing the precautionary principle. They're not sure what the effects are long-term on human bodies. They don't know. We don't know. In fact, you peer review this, if you look through JSTOR, if you can. It's hard to find stuff. Yeah. Frankly, because it's probably going to take generations to actually see what's going on, just to be honest with you. Having said that, the U.S. often, the U.S., I would say, Australia and other places, who tend to be a little bit more what we call liberal market economies, LMEs, they tend to be a little bit more willing to experiment with this kind of stuff than the Europeans are. So, the Europeans are very, very particular. Part of that is that there's a precautionary principle, they're fearful. Part of that is, too, that Europe is a bit concerned because agriculture in Europe is cultural, whereas in the U.S. it's often considered production. Let me give an example. For example, in France, the wine industry is highly unproductive. Extremely unproductive, yet they're heavily subsidized. Why do you think the French government heavily subsidizes French winemaking? Culture. And cheese, too. And I know it sounds stereotypical, and I'm being very honest here. I teach in Marseille every year. In fact, they're asking me to put together a certificate on production, stuff like this. I'm flying out there in December and in April, so I'm working closely with these universities. And subsidies, European Union subsidies to farmers is a big deal. And for the EU, especially France, they subsidize their wine production. Why do I bring this up? Do you think they want genetically engineered grapes or genetically engineered, hay or genetically engineered? They don't want, what's that?
They need the variety.
They don't like that. That's right, because these higher crop yields might reduce variety, which will impact the small farmer, and then it becomes a cultural issue. Does that make sense? In the U.S., farming isn't a cultural issue. Farming is more seen as a means to an end, which is eating. So in our country, if we use genetically modified foods to increase crop yield, which means farmers are doing it better and keeps our prices low, we're happy. Do you see what I'm saying? So yeah, part of it is they're worried about the effects. Part of it is, too, they're also concerned about protecting cultural heritage.
Right.
And that's one of the major issues in the European Union is they have the right to protect cultural heritage. That's why Italians will protect cheeses, French will protect cheeses, the Germans will protect beer. You cannot bring certain American beers into the German market. I don't know if you knew that or not. It's not allowed. Germans have a beer purity law. If that beer doesn't meet the purity law of the Germans, they will not bring it into that country. So the Budweiser you'll drink or the Miller you'll drink in Germany is dramatically different than the stuff you'll drink here. Yeah, very different. Very,
but
very
real
food
quick,
so
why do we in this country, why do we villainize Monsanto then?
I don't think we villainize Monsanto. I think what happens is no, I think what happens, Neville, is that we move very quickly in this country.
Yeah.
Market tends to dominate how we want to allocate resources, right?
Right.
And so what often happens when we do this, we often throw the precautionary principle off to the side.
Right.
And so I think Americans are saying, well, wait a minute now, hold on a second, what's going on? Maybe we should wait. But the effect but you actually see that this genetically modified food and crops, the yield, you can measure the yield, is that you can measure how much better it is. So farmers and others are like, no, we need to use this stuff. This will better everything. And people are like, I'm not too sure. And then you add the Europeans who say, well, we're not sure about this. And then they also don't want it in because of cultural reasons.
Right.
And it creates this atmosphere. It creates an atmosphere where people say, I'm not sure if this is what I want. I actually disagree with what Nev's saying. I think it's a legitimate atmosphere. I don't want to run to the extreme. I don't think we should ban Monsanto. I don't think we should ban their products. I think what needs to be done is U.S. government-funded research, not industry-funded research. U.S. government-funded research to do true research on these products and see whether or not they're good for society, or neutral, or harmful.
Right.
Well, I don't really know. I think we need to do more research.
And then out of that research would come good policies.
Yes.
That would be implemented.
The hope.
What I was trying to get at by playing the devil's advocate with you, because you do that to me all the time,
Yes, I do.
is that this sounds like my definition of politics, where we character assassinate our opponent without actually coming up with real issues and real data and real support to say, Monsanto's bad. We don't like the concept of GM, so we character assassinate, in this case, Monsanto. And to me, that's politics. I just wanted your comment on how does our political system work that way?
I think for our political system, again, we're going to separate the economics from the politics.
Yeah.
From the economic standpoint, in our liberal market economy where we want to try and be as efficient as possible, Monsanto offers a product that can't be beaten, especially in certain crop yield areas, right? Just flat out.
Yeah.
So having said that, the politics of it is whether or not it's fair, right? Whether or not it's fair for us to be eating genetically modified foods. Right. A lot of that fairness is going to come down to whether or not it's good for us.
Right.
So the politics are the politics of uncertainty. And so what you can do is either exploit or properly use the politics of uncertainty to try and promote a particular viewpoint.
Right. Okay.
And so, I'm not going to start screaming, oh, the sky's falling, and I think people do.
Right.
And that's not good to do when you start screaming the sky's falling, because what happens if the sky doesn't fall?
Right.
Yeah, do you see what I'm saying? But at the same time, I'm not going to give Monsanto a pass. I think we need to do research.
The point I'm trying to make is on food safety issues, GM foods, and global warming issues, renewable energy. I think there's people exploiting the politics of uncertainty. They're exploiting it to get their point across.
I mean, they often use, it was interesting because I had a professor down at UCR, and I would ask him, why do you say such extreme things? I would ask him, why do you say such extreme comments? And his argument was, well, that way people listen to me.
Right.
So, interest groups in this country often scream louder than they should because it's difficult to get policy passed. So, how do you create interest? Mm-hmm. You start screaming. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Sometimes it's good to scream. It's the right thing to do. Sometimes it's not the right thing to do.
It's a different kind of activism, but we want them to use good data, good facts, and good science.
Yeah.
And you're totally right about the science of GM. It's not there yet.
No.
There should be more. I'm surprised that there isn't any yet, which kind of there are people researching this. But anyway, yeah, go ahead.
Before this was in the healthcare. He was going to school and taking sciences, and I saw the video that your cousin's talking about, and they really do slam Monsanto. But Dr. Harvey, who is head of the science department over here,
biology
she is teaching that they're using, let's see if I can say it right, they're using bacteria to inject into these seeds to make these plants resistant to Roundup and things like that, which is we're putting that into our body, and we're bringing up our generations on this stuff. So I understand where all the screaming is coming from, so because I hear it from over here, and then we hear it from people that I believe know a little bit more about it because they're growing it and they're more involved in it. So
and some of the breeding too, and you gotta understand breeding. There's different ways of breeding the plant. Some that are, they find, tomatoes carry the gene for high vitamin C content. So they can now, with technology, can splice, take that DNA out and put it in a different plant. That's what it is. So it's not like they're creating this, it's kind of is a mutant, but it's not some new monster, new plant. They're taking something from nature and putting it in a different plant in nature.
Yeah. Now we have to be careful, and I'm not, I'm actually not disagreeing or agreeing with Dr. Harvey. I know Lisa very well. We have to be careful of what's called false correlations.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
So we got to be careful of false causality and false correlations. We don't know if that mutated seed actually is causing any difference in our body whatsoever.
Or if it will, we don't know.
We don't know.
So it's wrong, like you said, to slam Monsanto.
But I think
proven that this is.
I think the Europeans are being very, very cautious about
Yeah.
this. And I don't mind cautiousness.
No, I don't either.
I actually have no problems with being cautious about this until we find out more what's going on. If we were to say to Monsanto, we're going to be cautious about this, I think
I would say
Monsanto
you're
would
right,
stop.
except if you look at, Europeans are also very focused on what Europeans want. They're very
that's
much
true.
like us.
Yes.
So they're in great shape. But if we're looking at, and they're causing stuff to happen where, and they do, by slamming Monsanto, which, by the way, through the Gates Foundation, is donating tons of seed to Africa, this one corn seed that's drought tolerant. They are donating this in a huge way to Africa, as far as I know. But if we blow up Monsanto and their good research and GM and this new technology, now the African farmer is starving. And I'm sorry,
Exactly.
there is a big dang effect,
Yeah.
and there is a loser in the end, and it's not us, it's them. So, and when I see the little Zulu kids' faces, then I'm upset.
Yeah.
There's a number of reasons to slam Monsanto. I mean, I've just been listening to this, and it's like, okay, let's not forget. Can we criticize Monsanto in conjunction with the Dow Chemical Company for producing Agent Orange? Can we criticize Monsanto for being a largely special interest group who's had their hands in governments? Can we criticize Monsanto for not having been forthcoming? And can I think it's weird? Can I just think it's weird that these seeds, whose chemical structure has been altered, and like, as Dino's mentioned, like, we don't know. So yeah, okay, you can't slam them for that, but at the same time, I don't want to eat it. I don't personally like it. I mean, this is kind of what it comes down to, is that people as citizens is what you agree with, what you feel is best for you. That's kind of what it comes down to. I don't like the fact that Roundup is going into our river. I hate it. I don't like that. I don't like the fact that it's not really widely known. It's the first I've heard of it. How many people in this country know that, or in this desert, know that Roundup is in your river water, that you're drinking it? And you can argue that, hey, this is,
use it.
you
Most
can't prove
people
that
use
it's
it
not,
on their
it's not bad
lawns.
for you.
Most people in the desert have lawns, use it on their lawns. I mean, you can go buy a truckload of it at Home Depot.
I wouldn't care about genetically modified lawns or genetically modified
but it's
ethanol.
going to have
so
the genetic drift and all these same things that happen in that situation. And that's for a lawn. That's not even for food. But anyway, here's the deal. We are going to. This is cool because we are going to have a discussion at the end tonight. We need to have any more specific questions for these guys, and we need to go eat so they can go home. And then we're going to do some discussion tonight, and that's cool. And then we have other classes and other stuff that we can continue the conversation about because it's good stuff.
You have every right to question, Mike. You have every right to ask questions. No one can ever tell you to never ask. It's good to ask. People, when they ask, people have to answer. As a consumer, you have power, and you have the choice to spend. If Monsanto truly believes in its product, then it's their responsibility to show you why it's good. Otherwise, they'll go out of business. Do you see what I'm saying? It's their responsibility because consumers will alter their habits, which means as a farmer, he'll alter his crops. Do you see what I'm saying? Yeah. So ultimately, consumers have power in a market economy.
And that's been the problem. The American consumer hasn't used that power. All I'm saying is I want that to be educated power because otherwise you can easily do more damage than you do good.
And that's just what it comes down to because it's actually less power for the consumer if Monsanto has their hand in government. It's less power to the consumer if they're heavily subsidized. And it's less power to the consumer if, with all that in conjunction, we don't know exactly what Monsanto is doing because they don't necessarily have to be forthcoming, particularly when they've if they're a special interest group who has influence in the government when it comes to like making regulations and rules upon on any kind of labeling or information release.
Okay. So I would argue that Monsanto's not part of that iron triangle. It's called an iron triangle in policy, is what you're talking about. I would argue that Monsanto's actually not. They would like to be there, but I don't think they actually are.
Okay, so guys, only thing I would say is that actually mostly that's a political problem for you and Dino to sort out, Mike. As far as agriculture, we're in good shape. So we're doing what we're supposed to do. We're trying to do it sustainably and in good faith, as you see tonight. I want to really thank you guys for coming. Yes. This is literally the best session we've had. This kind of chaos and asking questions is exactly what we need. Okay? So it's cool. Thank you very much.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you. So Neville, what's the timeline?
Yeah, so I would like us to how long do you guys need to run out and go to Jack in the Box or whatever? Half an hour, okay?
Yeah.
Okay. So what I'm going to do is in half an hour's time, at 7:20, I'm just going to start the video. That keeps it fair. Or would you like to lecture first, Dino?
It's up to the students. I don't.
What do you guys want to do? You want Dino? How long is your lecture?
Half hour.
Because of Mike, we've now gone over. So.
That's right.
Good for you, Mike.
No, it won't. So